I just want to make sure the record's clear on this. The spokesman for the minority party is advising the Senate that the Laken Riley Act is a bad idea and we ought to stop it. The spokesman for the minority party is saying that Laken Riley's death and migrant crime is not an actual issue. I can't frankly believe that I am hearing these words. You said it's not an actual issue. I read you the quote.
Laken Riley's death was not an actual issue.
You said that the murder of a nursing student in Georgia has a lot of people on the right talking about migrant crime. You put it in quotation marks, square quotes, like it's an actual issue. She's dead because of migrant crime, right?
Hello, Patriots. Welcome back to Signal 76, the channel where we speak truth to power and defend the values that made America the greatest nation on earth. Today, we're exposing the blatant, outrageous threats to America's core freedoms, our safety, and our very way of life. We're diving deep into the shocking reality of what's happening at our borders and in the halls of power. And most importantly, we're going to talk about how we, the true heart of this nation, fight back. Now, before we get into the raw, unfiltered truth, I need you to do something crucial. If you believe in freedom, if you believe in America, then hit that subscribe button right now. Join the Signal 76 Army. Give this video a massive thumbs up so the algorithms can't ignore us, and drop a comment below. Let me know you're fired up and ready to stand with us. And trust me, you're going to want to watch this entire video right to the very end, because the insights we're dropping today are absolutely critical for every single patriot out there.
Hawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for calling this hearing. Mr. Isaacson, if I could just start with you. In March of 2024, you wrote, "The murder of a nursing student in Georgia has a lot of people on the right talking about migrant crime like it's an actual issue." That'd be Laken Riley you were talking about?
Laken Riley was an unusual case.
Yeah, here, let's have a look. Here's Laken Riley.
Yes.
Her murder, her horrific murder at the hands of this illegal migrant who was also unlawfully paroled in the United States. Her death, not an actual issue?
It's a tragedy.
But not an actual issue?
Migrant crime is much less of an issue than U.S. citizen committed crime.
Not an actual issue? Those are your words. Her death, not an actual issue. I just want to get, no, you say.
Of course it's an issue. It's a tragedy.
So what do you mean by your post? It's not an actual issue, meaning we shouldn't be paying attention to it. Senate's wasting its time this week on the Laken Riley acts that would address the circumstances of her murder. What's your advice to us? We just discontinue those proceedings now?
I think the Laken Riley Act could do a lot of harm. It would allow me to say, oh, this person shoplifted, and that would be enough probable cause to get somebody deported.
Interesting. You're here, who invited you to this committee hearing today, Mr. Isaacson?
The minority party.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're here as a spokesman for the minority party. I just want to make sure the record's clear on this. The spokesman for the minority party is advising the Senate that the Laken Riley Act is a bad idea and we ought to stop it. The spokesman for the minority party is saying that Laken Riley's death and migrant crime is not an actual issue. I can't frankly believe that I am hearing these words. You said it's not an actual issue. I read you the quote.
Laken Riley's death was not an actual issue.
You said that the murder of a nursing student in Georgia has a lot of people on the right talking about migrant crime. You put it in quotation marks, square quotes, like it's an actual issue. She's dead because of migrant crime, right? Let's try something else. Here, do you know who this is? Do you know who this young man is?
I do not.
Travis Wolf, 12 years old, from my state. Murdered by an illegal migrant who was also, like Jose Ibarra, illegally paroled by the last administration.
Is your expectation that zero migrants?
Let me tell you what my expectation is that those who commit crimes in this country will be appropriately dealt with. And that we should not be allowing migrants who commit crimes into this country. And that, yes, migrant crime that kills people like Travis Wolf, whose death was shocking, whose death is inexplicable, indefensible. I actually do think, yes, I think it's an actual, wait a minute, it's my time, Mr. Isaacson. I actually think, and I want the record to be clear on this, that migrant crime is a real issue. I think the Laken Riley Act is absolutely necessary. In fact, I propose an amendment to the Laken Riley Act that will cover people like Travis Wolf. I think that ICE ought to be required to detain those illegal migrants who commit violent crimes against children, like Travis Wolf. And yes, I happen to think, as a former prosecutor, I happen to think that their violent murders are actual issues. And the fact that you would say otherwise, sit here and advise the Senate that the Laken Riley Act is a bad idea, that the whole thing is not an actual issue, it's all just what, made up, I think is outrageous. I think it's absolutely outrageous. And the fact that you were invited here to give this testimony is stunning to me, I have to say. Absolutely stunning to me. Mr. Cuccinelli, let me just ask you, something else that Mr. Isaacson has said is that the Remain in Mexico policy was a program of death. A program of death. Is that your experience, having seen it implemented? A program of death?
As part of implementing it, my answer would be no. It was quite the opposite. And as I said in my statement, that the deterrent effect for illegal aliens to come that was gained by the migrant protection protocols, Remain in Mexico program, prevented a lot more abuse, child abuse, abuse of women on the journey, and death along the way than any of the crimes that occurred addressed to the people where the people in Remain in Mexico were the victims. So anytime we have illegal immigration going on, we have victimization of that population. It would be my view, and I think the dollars play it out, especially as you've seen since 2019, that the idea that the cartels benefited from the Remain in Mexico program is relatively ludicrous compared to the alternative. And the alternative we've lived with the last 4 years has been the greatest enriching of the most evil, vicious people in the Western Hemisphere in the history of this hemisphere.
Yeah, I wish the Remain in Mexico program had still been in effect when the killer of Travis Wolf crossed the border and was paroled illegally into the country. He might still be alive today. And if that's not an actual issue, I don't know what is. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You know, I think we're not just talking, we're arming you with knowledge. We are witnessing an assault on our traditional principles, the very bedrock of our society. And it's not some shadowy conspiracy. It's happening right out in the open in the hallowed chambers of our own Senate. We saw a prime example of this disgusting disregard for American lives when our own Senator Josh Hawley, a true lion fighting for us, had to confront a so-called expert named Isaacson. This individual, invited by the very people who were supposed to be protecting us, had the gall, the absolute audacity, to downplay the murder of Laken Riley. Laken Riley, a bright young nursing student, stolen from her family and her future by an illegal immigrant who should never have been on our soil. This monster was unlawfully paroled into our country. And what does this expert, Isaacson, say? He actually wrote, and Hawley called him out on it, that Laken Riley's horrific murder had people on the right talking about migrant crime like it's an actual issue. Like it's an actual issue? Tell that to Laken Riley's parents. Tell that to her grieving friends and community. Senator Hawley, with the righteous fury of every concerned American, rightly expressed his disbelief, his outrage, hammering home the undeniable truth that these deaths, these crimes committed by those here illegally, are very real, actual issues that demand not just attention, but immediate, decisive action. But the heartbreak doesn't stop there. Senator Hawley brought up another innocent victim, 12-year-old Travis Wolf from Missouri, a child murdered by an illegal immigrant who was also illegally paroled into this country. This isn't a statistic. This is a child whose life was snuffed out because of failed policies and a stunning lack of will to secure our nation. And what was Isaacson's response when confronted with the Laken Riley Act, a piece of legislation designed to prevent more tragedies like these? He testified that it could cause harm. Harm, he argued, it would create two broad grounds for deportation for minor crimes like shoplifting. Shoplifting. Are we seriously comparing shoplifting to the brutal murder of our citizens? This is the kind of twisted logic we're up against. Patriots. They are more concerned about the so-called rights of criminals here illegally than they are about the lives of American citizens. It's a political circus, folks, and the clowns are running the show. Hawley pointed out the obvious. Isaacson was invited by the minority party. The Democrats are actively bringing in people who oppose common-sense legislation to deal with migrant crime. Let that sink in. They are actively working against measures that would protect you and your families. This isn't just incompetence. This is a deliberate choice to put Americans last. But thank God for fighters like Senator Hawley. He's not just talking, he's acting. He's proposed amendments to the Laken Riley Act to ensure cases like Travis Wolf's murder are covered, to demand ICE detention for illegal migrants who commit violent crimes against our children. This is the kind of bold leadership we need. And let's not forget the Remain in Mexico policy. A policy that actually worked, a policy that this current administration dismantled. leading to chaos and, as Hawley argued, potentially the death of young Travis Wolfe. Isaacson had the nerve to call Remain in Mexico a program of death. A program of death? No, Mr. Isaacson. What's causing death and destruction is the open border insanity that has allowed criminals, terrorists, and God knows who else to flood into our country unchecked. The real program of death is the current administration's abdication of its most fundamental duty, to protect its own citizens. This isn't just about statistics or political debates in Washington. This is about the soul of our nation. It's about whether we will stand by and watch as our communities become less safe, as our laws are openly mocked, and as our children are put in harm's way. Will we rise up? Will we demand accountability? Will we fight to restore order and sanity? The time for complacency is over. The time for polite disagreement is past. We are in a battle for the future of America, and every single one of you is a soldier in this fight. We must be bold. We must be unified. We must be relentless. Our traditional principles of law and order, of national sovereignty, of putting American citizens first, are not up for negotiation. They are the pillars of our freedom, and we will defend them with every fiber of our being. Keep your eyes open. Stay informed. Don't let them gaslight you into believing that what you're seeing isn't happening. Migrant crime, IS, an actual issue. Our border IS in crisis. And the political elites who are enabling this are betraying the trust of the American people. We need to make our voices heard like never before. Call your representatives. Support true conservative fighters who aren't afraid to speak the truth. Educate your friends and neighbors. And never, ever back down. The fight for America's core freedoms is a fight we cannot afford to lose. Stand with Signal 76. Stand with truth. Stand for America. Let's keep this fire for freedom burning bright. Don't forget to share this video far and wide. Let everyone know what's really going on.